just another stitch. For those that don't know me, my name is Connie, and on today's video, I will teach you how to make this knitted beanie in the round. So stay tuned for what supplies will be needed. Okay, for the supplies, you will need a medium 4-weighted yarn. I use the Sundance Sweets, and the colorway is Cotton Candy. But like I said, any 4-weighted yarn will do. I got this yarn from Hirschner's if you're wanting to get some of this yarn. But this is what it looks like. The cake had 164 yards. I probably used about half the cake. Like I said, this is what's remaining. All right, knitting needles. You will need circular knitting needles in 5mm and also 5.5 millimeter. And my circulars, from the top of the needle, the tip, to the other tip, it measures 16 inches long. Like I said, 5mm and 5.5. On top of that, you will need double pointed needles in 5.5 millimeter. And you need 5. And this is to work your decreases. You will also need at least 1 stitch marker. You need a stitch marker to mark the beginning of your rounds. Now, as a beginner knitter, I would recommend marking your repeats. It'll make life easier for you, but that is up to you if you want to do that or not. You will also need scissors, a darning needle, and another thing I recommend, because more than likely at some point you will have to put your work down, I recommend end caps. And this helps protect your stitches from falling off the needles. So those are the supplies needed. Let's get started on the tutorial. Okay, we are going to be casting on our stitches using the long tail cast on method. And we're going to be casting on 80 stitches. So you want to grab your 5mm circular knitting needles and your yarn. And the first thing is you want to leave about 6 inches of a tail just for weaving in your end. Now, where you've just pinched it, you want to place it on top your needle like this. And we're going to wrap around 10 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And pinch right there. And keep it pinched where you initially pinched at. All right, this is about 10 stitches. How much yarn you need for 10 stitches to cast on. But we need 80. So we're gonna have to do this 8 times. So I folded this portion in half. So that now gives me 20. And I'm going to just keep folding it. 30. 40. 50. 60. 70. And 80. So pinch right about here. And that's where we're going to put our slip knot. Okay, to make your slip knot, we're just going to make a little circle like this. Your working yarn is on top, your tail's on the bottom. And I just pinch it, take your working yarn, pull it through that loop. like this. And now I'm going to release the tail and pull it tighter. So now I'm going to take my knitting needle and go through the loop and tighten. And your slip knot counts as your first cast on stitch. All right, so you want your working yarn, what's connected to the skein, on the top. Your tail is at the bottom. So take 2 fingers like this and grab your working yarn. Now take your bottom 2 fingers and grab your tail like this. Now you want to take your thumb and go through that tail piece like that. That's how I have it. Now your needle, you want to go all the way this direction. And we're going to scoop up the tail piece right here. Now we go all the way in the opposite direction, and we're going to scoop up that yarn, that's the working yarn, right here. And you want to just go through the loop. Drop your loop and tighten. So we now have 2 stitches casted on, because remember, the slip knot counts as your first cast on stitch. I'm going to do this again real slow for y'all, but if you need more practice, I do have a tutorial on the long tail cast on method, which I will put the link in the description box. So grab your working yarn like this. Grab your tail like that. Take your thumb, wrap around the tail. Now you take your needle, scoop up that tail piece, go all the way in the opposite direction, scoop up your working yarn, pull through the loop, release, and tighten. All right, you have 3 stitches casted on. All right, and we're going to do this until we have 80 stitches casted on. So just keep on going, and we'll meet back up once you have your 80 stitches. Okay, we have our 80 stitches casted on. Now, this is very, very important. I cannot stress this enough. You want to make sure all your stitches are facing the inside, like this. You do not want any of your stitches twisted. And when I say twisted, it's kind of like it's twisted like this, because it will twist your brim. And trust me, my friends, you do not want that. And it is something that commonly happens when you first start learning how to knit beanies. It did for me. All right. The way you want your needles situated, the one with your connected yarn pieces, your tail, and connected to your skein of yarn, will be on the right side. We got to connect this in the round. And it's not hard, my friends. Y'all can get this, okay? So you go in just like you normally would a knit stitch. Got to make sure that's in the back. Okay. You go in like you normally would. You take both pieces of yarn, your tail and your working yarn. And when you wrap around your right needle, you use both. And then you finish your knit stitch. And if you notice, it actually looks like there's 2 stitches here. You see? But that's 1 stitch. And that's very important to remember. So what I'm going to do, this marks the start of the round, but it's also a reminder that it's all one stitch. I put my stitch marker through both those loops. Because when you start round 2, you may think that it's actually 2 stitches when it's 1. All right, so that was your first knit stitch. And for round 1, our repeat is you knit 2 and then you purl 2, which will give you a ribbed brim. All right, so we have our first knit stitch. Now we're going to do the second one. But for the second one, we're not going to use the tail. We're only going to use what's connected to your skein of yarn. All right, so you make your X. You go through the stitch. See? And then you wrap around your right needle. Take your right needle, go through the stitch, and then knock it off. So you have your 2 knit stitches now. All right, now take your working yarn, bring it to the front because we're purling 2. All right, for the purl stitch, you go through the stitch like this. Your right needle's on top of the left. Then you wrap your yarn around your right needle and you go through the stitch and you knock it off. All right, again, you go through like this, wrap around, pull through the stitch, and knock it off. And yes, the purl stitch is more awkward to do. All right, so now we're going back to the knit stitch. This working yarn has to go to the back. Knit stitches, it's in the back. Purl stitches, it's in the front. And now we're going to work 2 knit stitches. 1 and 2. Back to purl stitch, yarn in the front. Here's the second one. Now we're back to knit stitch, yarn in the back. And we're knitting 2. 1 and 2. Purl stitch, yarn in the front, and we purl 2. 1. This is a 2x2 ribbing. And, oops, it popped out. 2. All right, yarn to the back because we're going back to knit. Okay. First knit stitch, 1 and 2. All right, back to purl stitch, yarn in the front. One and 2. All right, now we're just going to keep doing the repeat. You're going back to your knit stitches so the yarn's in the back. So just continue to do 2 knit stitches, then 2 purl stitches. And when you hit the end of the round, your last stitch is a purl stitch. And we're going to meet back up right before you get to that stitch marker. Okay, we have finished round 1. And one thing I do want to point out, and this might make your life easier as a beginner, I have my beginning of round stitch marker. But one thing you can do to kind of let you know if you're on track with the ribbing is every 4 stitches you can place a stitch marker. And that way you know you should end with your second purl stitch after the 4 stitches. but just make sure you can recognize your beginning of round stitch marker if you do that. All right, so we end it with a purl stitch, so our yarn is still in the front. So for round 2, make sure you put that yarn back to the back. All right, and I'm going to take my stitch marker out. And remember, this first stitch of round 2 is going to have 2 loops. All right, I'm going to tighten. Make sure you have it nice and snug too. So we're going to go ahead and knit stitch. We're doing the same thing. Knit 2, purl 2. All right, so knit stitch that first. Remember, it has the 2 loops. And I'm going to pull that in piece. That way we don't get any ladders. Okay? Now I'm going to do the second knit stitch. And I'm going to give that end piece another tug. All right, now we get into the purl stitch again. Yarn in the front and purl. All right, back to knit stitch, yarn in the back, and we're going to knit 2. 1, 2. And also make sure that your stitches don't twist. The first couple of rows is when that's the most important. Now we're back to the purl, yarn in front. And we purl 2. All right, now we go back to the back because we're knitting 2. 1 and 2. Now we're purling, yarn in the front, purl 1 and purl 2. All right, so we're going to just keep doing that. Knit 2, purl 2. And make sure you put the yarn in the back since you're going to knit stitches. And just go all the way around and we'll meet back up when you get to the stitch marker. Okay, we just finished round 2. So for round 3, you want to make sure you put your yarn back to the back. You slip your stitch marker. And we're just going to continue doing knit 2, purl 2 all the way around. So that's the first knit, second knit. Put your yarn in the front. We're going to purl 2, 1 and 2. All right, back to knit stitch. Knit 2 stitches, yarn in the back, first knit stitch, second knit stitch. Now we're going to purl 2 stitches, yarn in the front, and you just do your first purl, then your second. All right, back to knit stitches, yarn in the back. And you just do this all the way around, and you'll then have completed round 3. So you're going to want a total of 10 rounds with this rib stitch. So after you finish this round, you will do another 7 rounds to get you to your 10 rounds. And we will meet back up after round 10. Okay, you have finished your brim. You should have 10 rounds. And one thing I do want to mention, sometimes in patterns, you might see the rib stitching and the brim done differently. Sometimes you'll see knit 1, purl 1. Sometimes you'll see knit 2, purl 1. It's just different variations to the rib stitch. All right. So since we ended the round with a purl stitch, make sure you bring your yarn back to the back. And for the body, we're just going to be doing knit stitches. It's going to be so much easier. but we're going to transfer our stitches to a 5.5 circular knitting needle. Now, this is my personal preference to do this. Some patterns may not have you change needles after the brim, but I like to go up a half needle size because it just opens up the body better, okay? All right, so you're going to slip your stitch marker. And I have this kind of just folded down the right needle. That way it's kind of out of my way. And you're going to go in that first stitch and work your knit stitch. And make sure everything's nice and snug, because you do not want to have ladders. And then I go into the next one. And just keep knitting all the way around like this. And make sure you're putting your stitches on the new needle. And like I said, it's the same stitch. Okay, so just keep doing your knit stitches. And we'll meet back up once you have, let's meet back up once you have 2 stitches left on the old needle. Okay, I have 2 more stitches left on the first round of the body. So I'm just going to finish knitting them. Okay, and I just did that last stitch, and you see the old needle is now out. And now you want to make sure, because your stitch marker may have fallen, so make sure you place your stitch marker now. Okay. And again, make sure your yarn is in the back, which it should automatically be since we've been doing knit stitches. And for the second round of the body, you just continue to knit stitch. And you just keep knit stitching all the way around. And we'll meet back up once you reach the end of this round. Okay, we have finished round 2 now. And you're going to keep knitting all the way around. And you're going to do this until your hat measures 7 inches. And when I say 7 inches, you go to the end of your brim and you measure until it reaches that 7 right here. And once you have 7 inches to your hat, we'll meet back up. And at this point, like I said, all you're doing is you just keep knit stitching all the way around. And once your hat measures 7 inches, that's where we'll meet back up. See you there. Okay, my beanie now measures right at about 7 inches. And when you're measuring, you want to start from the bottom of the brim to right below where the needles are. And it may not be exactly 7, but it should be very close. For my beanie, I did 26 rounds for the body. This may differ for you, but the thing is, you want your piece to measure right at about 7 inches. That's the important part. All right, so now we're going to start with the decreases. And I want y'all to keep in mind that when it comes to the decreases, at a certain point, you're going to have to transfer your stitches to double pointed knitting needles. But you're still doing the same basic concept. You're knitting in the round. You're going in a circular motion. Now, you may have to transfer at a different time. I'm going to do the first set of decreases while I'm still on my circular, so you see how it still works up the same way. Then when we get to the second set, I'm going to transfer to the double pointed needles, so that way you can see it earlier on. I think it's usually when I get to knit 5, knit 2 together, when I tend to transfer to double pointed needles. It just all depends on when you find it's getting too tight to work your stitches. So the first round of the decreases, we're going to knit 8 stitches and then knit 2 together. So make sure your yarn is in the back. Move your stitch marker over. And let's knit 8 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. All right, now we're getting to that decrease stitch. We're going to knit 2 together. If you know how to do the knit stitch, you can knit 2 together. The only difference is instead of just going through 1 stitch, you're going through 2 stitches. And you go in the same way. You go through both the stitches like you're making an X. You yarn over your right needle. Or, I'm sorry, actually you wrap your yarn around the right needle. I shouldn't say yarn over, okay? Pull your right needle through both your stitches. And then knock the 2 stitches off. All right, we're going to get some more practice. So now we're going to knit 8 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. All right, we're at the decrease again. All right, we're knitting 2 together. You just go through both these stitches like you're making an X. See, that's how you're just going through both of them. That's the only difference. Everything else works the same. Wrap your yarn around the right needle. Now pull your right needle through both those stitches and then knock it off. All right, I'm going to show you one more time. We're knitting 8 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. All right, time to do your decrease. You're going to knit 2 together, go through both those stitches like you're making an X. Wrap your yarn around the right needle. Take your right needle and go through both those stitches and knock them off. All right, so at this point, just keep going around doing knit 8 stitches, then you knit 2 together. And the last, before you get to the stitch marker, that's going to be a knit 2 together, those last 2 stitches. And that's what you're going to end with. And we'll meet back up when you get to the stitch marker. Okay, you should have just done a knit 2 together stitch. You should now have 72 stitches on your needles. All right, make sure your yarn is in the back, which it should automatically be, but just make sure. All right, slip your stitch marker. So for round 2 of the decreases, you're just going to be doing knit stitches. So just go around doing your knit stitches and we'll meet back up right before the stitch marker. Okay, we just finished round 2 of the decrease section, and you should still have your 72 stitches. Now, for round 3, I'm going to transfer my stitches to double pointed needles. You need to have 5 double pointed needles. Now, you don't actually have to transfer at this point if you still feel comfortable where you have enough room to work your stitches. But if you're newer to making beanies, you're probably better off doing it now with me so you know what to do. All right, I'm removing the stitch marker. All right, so for round 3, we're going to knit 7 stitches and then knit 2 together. All right, so I'm going to go in through that first stitch. This round's going to feel wonky. I can tell you that right now. All right, so we're going to knit into that first stitch like this. All right, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. All right, so now it's time to do our decrease, which is we do knit 2 together. And it's the same thing I showed y'all before. You go through 2 loops, 2 stitches, and everything else works like a knit stitch. All right. Now we're back to knit 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So now it's time to knit 2 together. And again, you're just going through both the stitches like you would to knit. Wrap around, pull your right needle through both those stitches and knock it off. All right. So I'm finished with the first double pointed needle. So to mark the beginning of my round, I'm going to go right under that first stitch area and put my stitch marker on the body of the beanie. All right. So now I'm going to grab a second needle. All right. And I'm going to start working into that next stitch. All I'm doing is, with a double pointed, you're just breaking it up over different needles. So don't get too caught up making it harder than what it is. I know it looks complicated, but it really isn't. All right, we're knitting 7 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. All right, now it's time to decrease, so we're knitting 2 together. All right, now we knit 7 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now it's time to decrease. So we're knitting 2 together. All right, and we're finished with that second double pointed needle. Basically, on each double pointed needle, I'm doing the repeat twice on each one. All right, so now that's where we left off. Grab your third double pointed needle, and we're knitting 7 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. All right, now we're knitting 2 together, our decreased stitch. All right, now we're knitting 7 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now it's time to decrease, knit 2 together. All right, and we are finished with the third needle. Now we grab our fourth double pointed needle. And the rest of the stitches are going to go on this fourth needle. So we're knitting 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. All right, now we're doing knit 2 together, our decreased stitch. All right, now we knit 7 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. All right, our last 2 stitches, we knit 2 together, our decreased stitch. All right, and as you notice, everything is off your circular knitting needle now. All right, we now have 64 stitches on our needles. And you see, it's kind of like this. It's basically like this. It still works in a circle. Here's our stitch marker. That's the beginning of our round. So from this point on, when we're doing our rounds, you do everything on that first needle, then the second needle, third needle, fourth needle, and then you're back at the beginning of the round. All right. So for round 4 of the decreases, you want to pick up that 5th double pointed needle. And this round we are just doing knit stitches. And it's going to be fumbly. All right. So just knit around I'm going to do this round with y'all. That way you can see everything. After this, I'm just going to get y'all started on the rounds. Like I say, you just knit. And we're getting close to the end of the first needle. All right. And if you notice, that needle comes out. All right. This is going to now be our working needle. Now we go to that second needle. And we're going to work the stitches on the second needle. And again, all knit stitches. And one thing, too, you want to kind of be tight when you go to the new needle, because you don't want to leave a ladder. So make sure you have it nice and firm when you go into the first stitch of the new needle. And again, we're just knitting across. Just the knitting. And one thing when you do the decrease, you're going to start noticing the pattern. All right, we're getting close to the end of this needle. All right, so again, that needle came off. Now we just rotate to the next needle. And we knit stitch into each one of these stitches. And there are actually circular knitting needles that are small enough that you can do this on that instead of having to transfer the double pointed needles. I've heard people tell me that they use a very small needle, a circular one, but I've always done mine on double pointed. All right, so now that needle's out. We're going to that last needle. And again, we're just doing knit stitches. Oops. Like I said, it gets fumbly. All right. Just keep knitting. And we're getting close to finishing round 4 of the decreases. All right, and here's the last stitch of the round. Okay, and we just finished round 4. And as you can tell, we're back to the stitch marker. So can y'all guess what's coming now for round 5? We're going to do knit 6 stitches and then knit 2 together. So when we finish this round, we will be at 56 stitches. All right, so I'm going to get you started. All right, this is round 5. We knit 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, now we knit 2 together, our decreased stitch. All right, now we knit 6 again. 1, oops, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and knit 2 together, your decreased stitch. All right, we finished the first needle, then you go to the second needle, knit 6, knit 2 together, knit 6 again, knit 2 together. Then you go to your third needle, knit 6, knit 2 together, knit 6, knit 2 together. Then you go to your fourth needle, your final needle, knit 6, knit 2 together, knit 6, knit 2 together, and then we're back to the beginning of the round. And that's where we're going to meet back up. Okay, we just finished round 5 of the decreases. And at this point, you should have 56 stitches on your needles. All right, so for round 6, we're just gonna knit stitch all the way around the round. So make sure everything's nice and snug on that first stitch, and we're just gonna knit just like we did before. All right, and just knit all the stitches on your first needle, then your second needle, your third needle, and then your fourth needle. And then they'll take you right back to right before the stitch marker, and we'll meet back up there. Okay, we are at the beginning of the round again, and we are starting round 7. All right, for round 7, we're gonna knit 5 stitches and then knit 2 together. And if you're noticing on the decrease round, it goes down 1 each time. All right, so 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, now you knit 2 together, which is your decreased stitch. All right, and then you knit 5 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, knit 2 together, your decrease. And this is being ornery. All right, got it. All right, I just finished the first needle, and then the second needle, you knit 5 stitches, knit 2 together. You knit 5 again, knit 2 together. Do that on the third needle and the fourth needle, and then you'll be right back to the beginning of the round. And after you finish this round, you will have 48 stitches left on your needles. Okay, we have finished round 7, and you should have 48 stitches, and we're at the beginning of the round again. So for round 8, we're just going to be doing a round of knit stitches. All right, so just do your knit stitches all the way around on all 4 needles, and we'll meet back up once you get to the beginning of the round. Okay, we have finished round 8. Now for round 9, we're going to knit 4 stitches and then knit 2 together. And you're going to do that all the way around on all 4 needles. And each needle has 2 sets of this repeat. All right, so knit 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we knit 2 together, our decreased stitch. All right, then you knit 4 again. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, knit 2 together. All right, and just keep doing this on the other 3 needles all the way around. Knit 4, knit 2 together. And when you finish this round, you will have 40 stitches left on your needles. Okay, we have finished round 9, and we're back at the stitch marker. So for round 10, it's a round of knit stitches. You probably notice every other round is a round of knit stitches. So just knit all the way across on this round. All the stitches on all 4 needles will have a knit stitch. And we'll meet back up once you get to the end of round 10. Okay, we have finished round 10. So for round 11, we are going to knit 3 and then knit 2 together. So 1, 2, 3, knit 2 together. Then knit 3, 1, 2, 3, then knit 2 together, and you just keep doing this all the way around on your other 3 needles. Knit 3, knit 2 together, and when you finish this round, you will have 32 stitches left on your needles, and we'll meet back up right before the stitch marker. Okay, we have finished round 11. So you should have 32 stitches left on your needles. All right, for round 12, it's a round of knit stitches. So just go around knit stitching into every stitch on all 4 of your needles, and we'll meet back up once you get to the end of the round. Okay, we have finished round 12. Now for round 13, we're gonna knit 2 stitches and then we're going to knit 2 together. All right, so 1, 2, now we knit 2 together. All right, knit 2 again. 1, 2, now you knit 2 together for your decrease. Okay, and then you just continue to do this around the other 3 needles. Knit 2 stitches, then you knit 2 together. And when you finish round 13, you will have 24 stitches left on your needle. And we'll meet back up at the stitch marker. Okay, we have finished round 13. And we should have 24 stitches left on our needles. So for round 14, it's a round of knit stitches. So just go around and knit all your stitches on all 4 needles. And we'll meet back up when you get to the end of the round. Okay, we have finished round 14. So for round 15, we're going to knit 1 stitch. Then you're going to knit 2 together. That is your repeat. Knit 1, knit 2 together. All right. So we knit 1, then we knit 2 together. And each needle at this point will have 4 stitches left after you finish this round. All right. So just the other 3 needles, do 1 knit stitch, then knit 2 together. And when you finish this round, you will have 16 stitches left on your knitting needles. Okay, you have just finished round 15. So we're at the start of the new round. And for round 16, it is all knit stitches. Oops. So just go around all 4 of your needles and knit into each stitch. And we will meet back up once you get to the end of this round. Okay, we have finished round 16. And we're starting round 17, which is the final round. The final countdown, y'all. All right. So for round 2, we're just going to knit 2 together all the way around. All right. I know the needles get very fumbly. All right. So that's the first knit 2 together. And then you knit 2 together in the next 2. All right, you have 2 stitches remaining on that needle. Move on to the next needle. And we're going to knit 2 together. All right, and then knit 2 together again. All right, you have 2 stitches remaining on that needle. Move on to your 3rd needle. And again, we're knit 2 together. I don't think I have it in right. All right, that should have it. All right, and then we knit 2 together again. All right, we have 2 stitches now, and then now we're on that last needle, the 4th one. And another method to doing decreases, there's also the magic loop method that you can do your decreases. And actually, you can do a beanie completely in the magic loop method. All right, and the final knit 2 together. All right, so we have finished all of our rounds, and now it's time to finish off our hats. All right, so at this point, you want to leave a long enough tail because the 8 stitches that are remaining here, you got to go through all 8 stitches and have enough room to weave in your end. So I'm going to leave about this much. I find it's always better to have more than what you actually need than not enough. All right, take your end piece and we're going to thread our needle. All right, let's find the start of the round. All right, this is the first needle here. And all we're doing is we're going through the stitches. You can either do it one by one, or I'm going to try to go through both of them if I can get it. All right. And you just pull the needle out and your needle through the stitches. All right, here I'm going to do it one by one, so that way you can see what I'm doing like that. See, I can just take it off now like this. But you're just putting the needle through the stitch. Let me go closer to the edge. And that's all we're doing. Now I'm going to the 3rd needle, and make sure you're working your needles in the proper order too. All right, and now we get to that last needle. All right, tighten up your top. And now we're going to close it up. And what I do is I go directly across from where I'm at. Then I go about sideways here. Go in. And then I go directly across. I'm going to give it one more. Go to this side and go directly across. All right, now I'm going to turn my hat inside out. And we're going to weave in the end. And just let it go through a few stitches. Now I'm going to go the opposite direction. Now make sure you don't show through the front of your beanie when you do this. All right. And I'll go one more time back in this direction. And now I'm going to cut my yarn. All right, and we have this bottom end piece here. We need to weave that in. And if you want to add a palm to the hat, you can add a palm to it. Or you could just leave it as is without a palm. All right, and you just kind of go through a few of these stitches. But again, you do not want it, you don't want it where it's going to show on the front of your work. So make sure you don't go through the front part of the stitch. All right, and now we're going to cut our yarn. And we are done. You have made a knitted beanie. And you can take your stitch marker out. So this is how the beanie turned out. And as you can tell, I added a palm to mine. And I hope y'all enjoyed today's tutorial. And if you make this beanie, I would love to see a picture of your beanie. You can email your pictures to justanotherstitch2020@gmail.com. And I hope everyone has a fabulous yarny day. Bye, y'all.